Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two playlists here on the channel. Number one, the Walt Whitman playlist. Number two, the poetry discussion playlist. The poem in question today is Beat, Beat, Drums by Walt Whitman, and it reads as such. Beat, beat, drums, blow, bugles blow, through the windows, through the doors, burst like a ruthless force into the solemn church and scatter the congregation into the school where the scholar is studying. Leave not the bridegroom quiet. No happiness must he have now with his bride, nor the peaceful farmer any peace, plowing his field or gathering his grain. So fierce you were, and pound your drums, so shrill your bugles blow. Beat, beat, drums, blow, bugles blow over the traffic of cities, over the rumble of wheels in the streets. Are beds prepared for sleepers at night in the houses? No sleepers must sleep in those beds. No bargainers bargains by day, no brokers or speculators would they continue? Would the talkers be talking? Would the singer attempt to sing? Would the lawyer rise in court to state his case before the judge? Then rattle quicker, heavier drums. You bugles, wilder blow. Beat, beat, drums. Blow, bugles, blow. Make no parley, no stop for no expostulation. Mind not the timid, mind not the weeper or prayer. Mind not the old man beseeching the young man. Let not the child's voice be heard, nor the mother's entreaties. Make even the trestles to shake the dead where they lie, awaiting the hearses. So strong you thump, O terrible drums, so loud you bugles blow. So, what we have here is this poem was apparently written after the first battle of the Civil War. Uh, Walt Whitman being sort of the American poet of the day, this would have been troubling, right? Of course, this would have been troubling. This would have been troubling to every American, but the actual idea behind this is something we don't really hear about when we talk about the great wars of the past. This is about the everyday toll, not on the front lines. This isn't trench war. These aren't the trench poets that we're reading right now. This is Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was not fighting in the Civil War. Walt Whitman was too old for that by then. Well, there were Walt Whitmans fighting in the Civil War for sure, but what I mean to say is that this is about the day-to-day behind the war, something we don't really hear about, and something that gets sort of obfuscated by history. You read about wars in history books in their own little section. You don't see the obviously the people who are not fighting the war, because the war is the big idea on a historical scale. So when we're looking at this poem, the first thing that strikes me is this couplet right here. Now the line breaks are a little off because of the Walt Whitman Walt Whitman wrote very long lines sometimes. It's just hard to get that to translate onto a page where it's viewable, right? But leave not the bridegroom quiet. No happiness must he have now with his bride, nor the peaceful farmer any peace, plowing his field or gathering his grain. Something like this is pervasive to every bit of society. Something like a war affects everyone. Obviously, not as much as those fighting it, right? But it is impossible for daily life to really continue. And it you have to think on some level it should be. It should be It should be prohibitive to wage war. It is prohibitive to every citizen to wage war. Without making comments on current politics, because there's always some war somewhere to talk about, if you just think about the pure numbers, completely unemotionally, completely detached from the reality of people's lives, you take X percentage of the population and throw them into a field somewhere, society starts to fall apart. We saw in the 2020 to 2023 sort of time frame what supply chain really looks like. Well, when you're plucking one of every three productive age males out of society, something has to happen. Someone has to fill in. There has to be ground made up somewhere. And when you're plucking those people from their lives, well, something else falls apart too, doesn't it? I think that there's no coincidence that the great revolution of the workforce in the 50s and 60s, with women flooding into the workforce, right? I don't think that there is any coincidence that this happened 20 years after World War II. You start looking at the number of men who left society to go fight in this war, nowhere near as devastating as it was for those countries in Europe. Still a whole lot of people. A lot of women entered the workforce for the first time during those years. Not that there was never women in the workforce, but you understand what I'm saying. It's so weird that we have to sort of parse words like this on the internet anymore. But uh, a flood of new labor into the workforce really shot productivity through the roof because, well, we had the people to run the country and we had the people to go fight in a war. Well, that's an awful lot of power that we had that was untapped, except that those men weren't in the country raising their children, and those women weren't at home raising their children either. No one was raising the children. Then the 60s became the 60s. It is. We're in a strange place where this type of rhetoric has to be couched in, I don't mean this, I don't mean that. We can just go all the way back to Walt Whitman, way back for the Civil War, where he was saying life is torn asunder during times of war, not just on the front lines. Obviously, it is on the front lines. Obviously, those people who never come back from war are never coming back. Not for anything. There's a great line in Fight Club. I know it's in the movie. I don't remember if it's in the book, where Tyler Durden is speaking in one of his all-knowing sort of diatribes, and he says, "Our war is an emotional war." It strikes me that the Great War, World War I, World War II, all the way back to the Civil War. I was reading a Hemingway short story recently where the young man who had gone to World War I came back from World War I, and his mother was talking to him. This is Soldier's Home by Ernest Hemingway. And she says, look, I understand what you went through. Kind of not understanding that she didn't understand it, right? But she says, I understand what you're going through. Your grandfather went to war. I had to deal with that war being the Civil War. So there was the Civil War in the 1860s. You skip a generation, then all of a sudden, you've got World War I. You don't even have to really skip a generation to get World War II. Is society writ large still recovering from the socio-cultural damage that comes from having so many people ripped out of their normal lives for such a long time? It strikes me, maybe, that is the case. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. There's poetry on the channel every Monday, and literature is the only thing I talk about here. So if you find yourself here by chance but not design, and you are a literature lover, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.